Hey guys, what's going on? Dave Collins here with cleverhiker.com, and today we are going to be covering one of my favorite topics, backpacking tents. So if you are in the market for a new backpacking tent, you have definitely come to the right place. A little bit about me. Again, my name's Dave. I run the website you see in front of you, Clever Hiker. We're going to be using that as a visual guide for today. I have been a backpacker for over 30 years. I grew up in scouting, became an Eagle Scout. I have thru hiked the Pacific Crest Trail and have many thousands of trail miles under my belt all around the United States and on trails throughout the world. But more importantly, I have extensive experience with all of the backpacking tents that we are going to be talking about today. So you are going to be getting advice from someone who really knows about this market. Clever Hiker, we have been around as a website since 2012, so we have been testing backpacking, hiking, camping gear for many years. We are a fully independent website, so none of the companies that we're going to be talking about today paid us to be on this review. These are just the products that we like, that we have tested, that we recommend to our friends and family. So I'm going to provide that information to you guys today. I hope you find it helpful and useful. I'm also going to provide links to this video in the description. So it's easier for you to find it if you're finding this video on YouTube. And I will provide links to all of the products that we're talking about to make them easy for you to find as well. If you're wondering if any of our recommendations have changed since the time of the recording of this video, you can always come to our website and check it out. Check out our page. We update our pages when new products come out. So we will review them, we'll test them, and then we'll update our findings if you're curious if anything has changed. Obviously, we don't just review backpacking tents. We review, all kinds of different products: sleeping bags, sleeping pads, shoes, headlamps, power banks, stoves. We have tons and tons of reviews and roundups. So if you're curious about a backpacking, hiking, camping product, chances are we have extensively reviewed it and tested it, and we're putting out our own independent findings on what we like. So please come check us out at Clever Hiker, and let's get into backpacking tents. All right. So this is our page for backpacking tents. As you can see here, we do have table of contents, so it's easy for you to click around and get to different sections of our site if you're curious. Just to get to our list, or you want to see our product comparison table where we do have, sortable prices and dimensions and comfort ratings, durability ratings, weather resistance ratings for all of these tents. We also have how we tested, our methodology, and then if you're maybe new to backpacking or you're looking for a specific thing, let's say you're just interested in weight and you really want our lightweight recommendations, we have those down here in our What's Most Important section. Or maybe you're looking for a budget tent or a big tent or a durable tent or a one-person tent. We also have information on how to choose backpacking tents just in general. So maybe you're a little bit more new to backpacking and you want a buying guide on kind of what our thoughts are about sizes of backpacking tents, the weights and how those are calculated, footprints, do you need that, interior space, all those kinds of things. We cover all that. And then we also have some honorable mention backpacking tents as well. So start back up here at the top. We've got our little introduction and then some quick picks. If you're just looking for kind of the raw, hey, just give me some links to the best stuff with some titles, we've got that here for you with our best overall, best ultralight, best budget, and all those kinds of things. But today we're going to get down into our list. So first of all, we're going to start with the Big Agnes Copper Spur HV UL2. So the Copper Spur has been around for many years, and it's actually been at the top of our backpacking list for many years. In recent years, there's been more competition for the Copper Spur, but for a long time, this was kind of just hands down the best balanced backpacking tent on the market. And you can see it has our editor's choice. It is the top of our list, so we still view it as one of, if not the strongest backpacking tent on the market. The reason why it is up here is because of that balance. It's a fully freestanding tent, So it has a pole structure with poles on all of the corners and a ridge pole that goes over the top to pull the sidewalls out. So it is very easy and convenient to set up. It has color coding on the poles that also make it easy, but it's also tapered, so it's saving weight in lots of good places. So the head of the tent is a little bit wider than the foot of the tent. It tapers down, and this is a backpacking tent that is really focused on saving weight. Weight is really important when it comes to backpacking. You're going to want to keep your overall pack weight down. That's going to be really helpful when you're hiking long miles or you're hiking thousands of feet up in elevation. It makes a really big difference, and that's one of the ways that the Copper Spur excels for how convenient this tent is and the spaciousness of it. It is a very reasonable weight at 3 pounds 2 ounces, and that's the packed weight. So with all of the tent poles and stuff sacks and guy lines and tent stakes and everything, that's your total weight. So you split that between 2 people, you've got about 1.5 pounds per person. Really not a bad deal, especially for the amount of interior space that it's going to provide. Interior space is a really important note for this tent. So that you can see it does come in 4 different sizes. I would personally say, I mean, I've tested and used the one-person version of this. I probably would not recommend that. There's other versions that I like better for one person that are in kind of that are competitive for weight and for price. So the 2 most popular versions of this tent are going to be the 2-person and the 3-person version. I've used both extensively over the past 10 years, and I would say that it really depends. So 3-person tents, you know, you're not usually putting 3 people in them. It's actually more, it's kind of a more livable space for 2 people. So it kind of depends on your size. If you're more of an average size person, you're in the kind of 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", height range, and you're going to be using regular width sleeping pads, you know, not wide sleeping pads, then I'd say you probably are going to go for the 2-person version of this tent. That's going to provide your best balance of keeping weight down while still giving you a livable interior. If you're a little larger, I'm 6'2", I've got wide shoulders. I like to generally sleep on wide sleeping pads. You know, the 2-person version of this tent can fit 1 wide sleeping pad and 1 regular sleeping pad if they're mummy shaped and tapered, but the wide pad is kind of going to dominate the space. So if you have one partner in your hiking group that uses a wide pad, you may consider bumping up to the 3-person version. It is about 12 ounces more, but if you keep the rest of your pack weight light, it really is a fantastic tent. That's probably the one that I have used the most, just because of my size and liking that extra interior space and keeping the rest of my pack weight down pretty light. One other quick note as it pertains to the size of the Copper Spur. This is one of the few tents on the market that actually comes in a long version. I believe the 2-person and 3-person version of this tent come in long versions. So if you are a taller hiker, I'd say, you know, again, I'm 6'2", I'm like right on the edge for this tent. I think I do fit. I've used it, countless times. My head's pretty close to the ceiling, touching the ceiling with a sleeping bag, and my feet are kind of rubbing against the floor with the sleeping bag. So I'd say, right on the edge. If you're much taller than 6'2", then I'd say it probably would make sense to bump up to the long version. That is a nice, it's a nice option to have in a backpacking tent for tall users. The long versions don't increase the width. So if you are looking for, that wide pad usage, again, you'd probably go for the 3-person version, but again, there's a 3-person long and a 2-person long. So that's just a really nice option to have that not a lot of other tents have. So a couple other unique features about this tent. You can see that it has this awning. You can use trekking poles to set this up. I don't tend to hike with trekking poles, so that's not a feature that I really use. But one nice thing that you can see with this, it's got those double zippers. You can stow this door in the normal way. You've got your normal zipper and you can pin back the door, but you can also, when the weather's going to be nice, you can pin it up and have this nice big easy entrance on your rain fly. So that is a nice feature of this. Also, just like the hardware and everything that comes with the tents, the guy line comes pre-attached. It has nice buckles on there. All of the fasteners and the materials are all really nice for this tent. It's very high quality materials. It's a good balance again between durability and keeping weight down. Nice big wide open doors. It has probably the best pockets of any tent on this list. So this pocket is a little hard to see here in this picture, but it's a big open gear loft. You've got pockets at the head of the tent as well, and pockets on the side next to where you're going to be sleeping. So best in class pockets. And just generally overall, a really well thought out design that has been around for many years. And like I said, it's kind of been at the top of our list for quite a long time. As far as the downsides with this tent, so you'll see, $530. It's definitely not a cheap tent. I would say you get what you pay for. So if you're going to put it to good use, I think that's a very fair value. And you'll see lots of the tents on this list are kind of in that range. Some a bit more expensive, some a bit less. But it is, it's an investment. And then the rainfly zippers can snag. That's a pretty common occurrence on a lot of tents. So we don't ding it too much for that. But you can see kind of here pros here. This is, it's very light for a fully freestanding tent, easy to set up, ample headroom. Although I would say that there's maybe a couple of tents a little lower on our list that have a little bit more headroom. So again, that's where it comes down to deciding between the 2 or 3 person version of this tent. Great pockets, large vestibules and doors, and just overall very high quality. So great marks for the copper spur. Again, we put this tent through a lot of use, and we really like it a lot. Next on the list is a through hiker favorite, is an ultralight favorite, is again one of my personal favorite tents that I've ever used, and that's the Zpacks Duplex. Now this is a much more specialized tent. So this is an ultralight single wall non-freestanding tent. The structure it uses is trekking poles. So you can see these poles here. These are the only poles on the tent, and it has a single wall. So there's no, the rain fly is the wall. There's no mesh to separate the two. And it has this hanging bathtub floor that is attached to the rain fly. It is fully enclosed, so you're not going to have any issues with bugs or critters getting in. It provides fantastic weather resistance, and the one thing you're going to see is a very expensive tent. $700 for the duplex. Again, like I said, it is specialized. The reason is that material. The material it's made with is this special DCF material, and that's why you can get this weight that you see here, which is absolutely bonkers. 1 pound, 2 ounces for a 2-person tent. It's just absolutely insane. That's not counting, there's no poles or tent stakes included in that weight. So the tent stakes are going to increase the weight a little bit, and the poles, it kind of depends on if you're a trekking pole user or not. I personally am not a trekking pole user, but Zpacks does have some excellent carbon fiber poles that can be paired with this. They're an expensive add-on as well, but they're incredibly light and strong. And again, I've covered many miles with this tent. I've done, through hikes with this tent, and it is a really fantastic design. Okay, getting into the roominess of this tent, it is offered in a 1, 2-person, and 3-person sizes. It's also offered in long sizes. So if you are a taller hiker, I'm 6'2", and I fit pretty well inside the duplex and triplex. I don't feel like I need to bump up in size, but I'd say I'm probably right on the edge. But if you are taller than that, Zpacks offers different varieties of this tent. But the basic model, the duplex is still our favorite. We've tested the zip version and some of the other versions. I personally still like the duplex the best of them. Again, it comes in a 1-person, 2-person, 3-person. The 1-person has 1 door and is going to be the most affordable version and the lightest version. But for only about 3 ounces, you're going to bump up to the 2-person version. I think it's well worth it. Even if I was just going to be hiking solo in this tent, I would choose the duplex to have 2 doors, 2 vestibules, be able to open the rain flies, get views on both sides, get extra ventilation. So that's the way I would go. And if you get that 2-person version, you do have the versatility of being able to backpack with a partner as well. So that's nice for a very minimal weight penalty. I would say that 45 inches in width for this tent is not super wide, but because the sides are really truly straight vertical, it does actually feel like a pretty roomy interior, and also the peak height of this tent at 48 inches is very high. So when you're lying flat on the ground, you're going to see that the ceiling of this tent is going to be a little bit closer to your face than, say, in a dome version tent like the Copper Spur, but it's really not that bad. It's a great design, and that high peak height means that you can sit up without touching the walls of the tent. If you are going to be hiking mostly with a partner, my favorite version of this tent is actually the 3-person version, the Triplex, and that gives you extra width, and so you're just going to have an even more spacious interior of this tent. So again, if you're hiking with a partner, that's a great way to do it. But again, it kind of depends on your size. If you're in that average size, 5'9", 5'10", or below, I would probably just stick with the duplex because it is still a very roomy tent. And again, it depends on, part of the cutoff is, are you hiking with a wide sleeping pad or regular sleeping pad? If you're, if one person in your pair is going to have a wide pad, then I would probably bump up in size to the 3-person. So there are some downsides. Obviously, it's a very expensive piece of equipment. If you're going to be through hiking a long trail, say a Pacific Crest Trail, Continental Divide, anything along those lines, I think that this investment would be well worth it. You're going to be saving so much weight in your pack that it's really, and you're going to be sleeping months in your tent. It's a really worthy investment to spend a couple $100 more than a similar tent. But there are some other downsides that you should consider with this. Because it's not a freestanding tent, it's not as easy to set up. You're going to have to stake out all of the corners. It takes a little longer to set up. Sometimes if the ground is particularly rocky, or there's lots of tree roots, or you have a very small space in which you are going to be able to pitch your tent, it gets a little bit more challenging, and you're going to have to get a little bit creative. You might have to pile up rocks on a tent stake to, hold a corner in place. So you do have to, it does take a little bit longer sometimes to set it up, and it is a little bit more fooling around. So if ease and convenience are among your top priorities, this probably isn't the best option. And also probably not a great option for beginners. This is more of a experienced hiker. You know that you like hiking long miles, you like hiking hard miles, and you're looking for a tent to really keep weight to an absolute minimum. The other thing to mention is this is a single wall design, so condensation management is going to be a factor here. When you breathe at night and the temperature drops and the dew point drops, you're going to form condensation on the inside of this tent. And if you rub up against it, that can be cold and wet and a little bit uncomfortable. Not the biggest deal. Usually it's pretty easy to avoid rubbing up against it. Also, it's easy to avoid tent condensation forming if you leave, the tent just generally ventilates pretty well, but if you leave a door open as well, or 2 doors open, then you get a lot of ventilation, very little condensation. But that is something that that's different with a single wall tent like this. That you're not going to have to deal with something like the Copper Spur. So a little bit more expensive, a little bit, more time to pitch, and a little bit more fooling around with things like interior condensation. So there are some real measurable downsides with a tent like this. Again, that said, if you are really looking to keep weight to a minimum, this is one of my all-time favorite backpacking tents. Next down the line is a different style tent. Again, so this is a little bit closer to that Copper Spur style, but this is a very roomy and affordable crossover tent. This is the REI Half Dome SL2 Plus. So you can see the price way more reasonable for a backpacking tent. And the size is notable. So 90 inches and 56 inches in width. So you get a lot of width here. It has a very long ridge pull, so it pulls out the sides quite a bit. So this is actually the type of tent you know, it's offered in a 2-person and 3-person size, but this is actually a tent where the 2-person size is big enough for 2 people. You can fit 2 wide pads in there. It's a very spacious interior, so you don't have to bump up to a 3-person size in a tent like this, just in order to get more space for 2 people. So one of the big downsides with this tent is the weight, though. So it does come with a footprint. Footprint is just a piece of material, goes on the ground underneath the tent. It's going to help prevent abrasion and will help your tent floor last a bit longer. So that's a nice durability piece that comes with it. The tent floor itself is fully waterproof and is actually quite thick and durable, so you don't have to bring the footprint. When I go out backpacking with this tent, I don't bring the footprint, but it still, that'll save you about 8 ounces, but it still makes this a tent among the heavier on our list. So I would say that this tent is a great option for as a crossover tent. It's big and comfortable enough for car camping, but you can also take it in the backcountry. If you split the weight between 2 people, it's not too bad. But I'd say the more backpacking you plan on doing, the more miles you plan on covering, or if you like backpacking in the mountains where you're going to be hiking up in elevation, and you're planning on doing a lot of backpacking with your tent, I would probably steer you more towards a lighter design. That said, for a lot of people, this is a real sweet spot. If your backpacking trips are going to be a bit on the shorter side, or you like to hike in and set up a base camp and then do day hikes from there, or you want a tent, again, that you can pull up to a car camping site and it's not going to be a tiny little 2-person backpacking tent that you're going to squeeze into, this is an awesome option. It's durable. It's great with weather protection. It's a very reasonable value price. You know, comes with a footprint as well. But again, as a dedicated backpacking tent, this is you know, not one of our top options for long miles and hard trips. Okay, so next on our list, another editor's choice for us is the Big Agnes Tiger Wall 2. So this is a unique tent. It's a semi-freestanding tent. There are a few tents like that. There are 3 on our list, and we actually have a blog post where we you know, tested the 3 different ones against each other. So feel free to reference that if you're curious in this type of design. But I'll pull up a picture here and show you exactly what a semi-freestanding tent is. But this tent, so it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid. The idea is to keep weight to a minimum. So you can see it kind of looks like a traditional fully freestanding tent with this pole structure, but the pole continues down and actually just has one pole that connects in the middle of the back here. So to pitch the footprint of this tent, or excuse me, the foot of this tent, you actually need to pull it out and stake it down. So you are going to have to stake out this tent, which could cause, you know, some slight issues on really extremely rocky terrain. It is a little bit harder to pitch maybe than a fully freestanding tent. You know, I tend to stake out my fully freestanding tents anyways, so it's not really a huge deal. You do lose a little bit of the rigidity from having a fully freestanding tent with the poles going out. So, you know, the bottom of your tent, the wind is going to push it around a little bit more. If your tent sags in the nighttime, it's wet, you're going to have a little bit more movement in your tent, maybe a little bit less of that wind resistance. But it still is a fantastic design, and it's a really good blend to keep weight, again, to an absolute minimum. So I really like semi-freestanding tent designs, and they're a fantastic choice. There are, you know, a few downsides. So this looks very similar to the Copper Spur. The ridge pole here is a little bit shorter, so the interior space is a little bit smaller. It does feel a little bit smaller. It does still have that excellent loft pocket. The material also feels a little bit thinner. So you're going to lose a little bit of the durability from the materials. That said, this is still, if you take good care of it, this tent's going to last a long time, and any kind of tent floor can be punctured. So you always want to be careful where you set your tent up. Make sure you look at the ground and there's no sharp sticks or rocks that are going to poke through your tent. Always bring along some tenacious tape if you do have any tent punctures. But I still feel very confident in a tent like this. It's on the thinner side. durability is not going to be one of its strong suits, but if you're careful with it, it will last a long time and work well. So going back to talking about the spaciousness of this tent, it is offered in 1, 2, 3-person versions. Again, the 1-person version, not really our favorite. We'd probably use the 2 and 3-person versions are kind of our favorite recommendations. You can see weight is a real strong suit here for this 2-person version, 2 pounds, 8 ounces. That's very light for a tent that's going to give you most of the convenience of a freestanding tent, but is, even lighter, more than a half of a pound lighter than something like the copper Spur. The price-wise also is going to be a little bit lower. So this is a pretty good sweet spot for lower weight, lower price, still a pretty livable interior. That said, I personally find the 2-person version of this tent to be a bit tight for me personally. Again, I think that depends on the size, how big of a person you are. If you are on the bigger side, I would say, bumping up to the 3-person version of this tent does make sense. It's going to give you a roomier interior. There's another tent on this list that we're going to talk about in a little bit that also has, is a very similar design. If you are looking at the 3-person version of this tent, then I would check out the NEMO Hornet 3-person as well. But again, very well-rounded tent, great weight, great price. I have one very small nitpick with this tent, which is the rainfly door. You can see this clasp is a little bit low, so this rainfly door does kind of hang a little bit lower than I would like for getting in and getting out. It's not that big a deal. You get used to it pretty fast. So that's sort of a minor gripe. But I think in general, you can see our pros here. This is a very ultralight design. It's very convenient, good pocket layout. Again, quality construction materials. The 2-person design is very roomy if you're going to use it as a solo shelter. So it's a great tent for 1 person. It's a bit tighter for 2 people, but again, doable depending on your size. And then, 2 doors and vestibules are great. You can see our cons here. We covered a bit tight, not quite as durable. Rainfly vents. So this design does not have dedicated rainfly vents, so you're not getting quite as much ventilation. Again, I think it's a minor downside. You can open the zippers from the top of the rainfly to get vent. Not the biggest deal in the world, but it is something worth noting. Okay, the SlingFin Portal. This is another absolutely fantastic backpacking tent. Again, very unique. This is a real competitor to the Big Agnes Copper Spur. This is a smaller company. You might not have heard of them, but I've been very impressed by this company and this tent in particular. They really know their stuff, and there's a lot of unique features in this tent that you're not going to find in other tents. So price and weight, again, kind of in the similar ballpark as a tent like the Copper Spur for the 2-person version of the Portal. The Portal does come in a 2 and a 3-person version. But one thing that is unique about this tent is that it has a much longer ridge pole than the Copper Spur. So I believe when I measured it, it was 9 or 10 inches longer. You can kind of see here on this picture. It has a very long ridge pole, and it pulls the walls out very far. So that will provide a lot of interior space on the inside. It also has a very unique feature that I haven't seen on any other backpacking tents, which allows you to hook trekking poles up to this ridge pole down to the ground. And then when the rain fly is on, that gives you a lot of extra added stability in a tent like this. So it means that, it can handle very high winds. It can handle, light snow. It's not built to be a 4-person tent and have heavy snow, but it can handle a lot. It's pretty tough, which is awesome. And then another thing that it comes, you can kind of see on the far end of this tent, it has these internal guy lines. This is another unique feature that you're going to see more in like hardcore mountaineering tents, kind of 4-season tents, and less in backpacking tents. It comes with one side guide already, and you can buy guy lines, internal guy lines for the other side. But the thing that this internal guy line structure does, you can kind of see it a little bit better in this picture here, is it's going to form a connecting guy line point that goes all the way down to the corner here, which is exactly where your tent pole is going to be connected and your tent stake is going to be connected. And then it forms a guy line all the way up to the corner of the tent. You can see here where it connects to the pole, and then when your rainfly is on, there's another guy out point to that spot as well. So it provides a lot of structure on the inside of your tent for, again, if it's really nasty conditions, really windy, whipping, cold, snowy conditions, it's going to give you extra stability. So this is a very burly little tent, especially for the weight. Again, very competitive for a two-person tent, 3 pounds, 5 ounces. It does have that tapering floor, so it is a very similar floor size. It has a pretty high peak height again. So the high peak height, again, with the long ridge pole is going to provide a lot of extra headroom in this tent. So it feels like a very roomy tent. This is a tent that you can use with 2 people, and it's not going to feel as claustrophobic as some other two-person tents. So this is a really great design. One thing I will say for me personally, this tent, it's a little bit 85 inches. That's still in the ballpark as many other tents. It does feel to me personally a little shorter than I would like compared to some other tents. 2 or 3 extra inches would probably go a long way for me personally. Again, I'm a little bit taller, so I do feel that in this tent. But overall, I think in general, this is a really fantastic offering with some very unique features that make this clearly like one of the best tents in the market for convenience and livability and interior space and weather protection. Same deal with it being expensive and the rainfly zippers being able to snag as a lot of tents. The NEMO Hornet 3. So when I mentioned before with the Big Agnes Tiger Wall tent, a competing semi-freestanding tent, that is the NEMO Hornet. So there's 3 tents that are semi-freestanding on this list: the NEMO Hornet, the MSR FreeLite, and the Big Agnes Tiger Wall. We've already covered the Big Agnes Tiger Wall. The Hornet, we're listing the 3-person version on here, but the 2-person version is also a fantastic option. The 2-person version is quite a bit smaller interior. It feels a little bit tighter than, say, the Tiger Wall 2-person version or the MSR FreeLite 2-person version, but it still is an awesome tent. The thing that it does really best in class is it has smaller pole segments, so the poles pack down very small, and the 2-person version of this tent packs down smaller than almost any other tent I've seen. It's really remarkable, especially for a semi-freestanding or freestanding tent. So that 2-person version is a really great tent. It doesn't have a very wide ridge pole, so I would say that it's best kind of as a 1-person tent, unless you are on the smaller side and you're going to be sort of squeezing in. You can kind of see here. This is what the sides of the tent look like. Come on, internet. All right, there we go. Yeah, so this is sort of your ridge pole. It's a unique a unique setup here, but your walls are slanting. So if you have 2 people in here, unless you're okay with tighter spaces and you're a little bit on the smaller side, it's going to feel a little bit claustrophobic. That said, if you're in that sort of 5'10", 5'9" height or lower, this could be an absolutely fantastic 1-person tent, the 2-person version of this. So it really is a great design. The reason that the 3-person version is on our list is if you look at the weight to the price to the space of this tent, it really is a fantastic option. The interior of this tent feels very big and roomy for 2 people. It's a palace in there. You can see the length 88 inches, height at the head is 68, and at the feet is 62. That's very big dimensions, and a 44-inch peak height. The Osmo fabric material doesn't sag quite as much as the typical sil nylon when it gets cold and wet, so that's also nice, especially in a semi-freestanding tent design. So if you're looking for a really roomy tent that's got, again, that semi-freestanding design, so it's going to sort of maximize your space for your weight of the tent. This is the 3-person version of this tent is really fantastic. I like it quite a lot. My only minimal gripe with this tent that you can see in this picture here is that it does have a tie back for this one side of the rainfly, but it doesn't have a tie back here on the other side of the rainfly. So I like it. I like it when tents have, tie backs for the rainflies on both sides. You can take this door and pull it back, and it'll give you big views and ventilation on that side of your tent or on both sides of this tent. So that is not a consideration with this tent. You can kind of jerry rig it. You can attach this door over here to this tent stake or to the middle pole. It doesn't work quite right. So, and you could also, make your own toggle if you wanted to. You could, find a way to glue or tape or fasten something on there that gave you a door tie back. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it is a minor gripe that I have with this tent. Still, I think the Hornet Osmo, both the 2-person and the 3-person version are really nice tents worth considering. So the Sea to Summit Telos TR2, this is another very unique tent. It has features that are, different from most other backpacking tents on the market. The thing that kind of knocks this tent down a little bit on this list is the price, $600. It's a little bit more than some of the competition. We wish that it was, a little bit more competitive price-wise. This company is out of Australia, so it's potentially, maybe that has something to do with it as far as bringing products over. But it is really unique, and the thing about it that really stands out is the ridge pole structure. So you can see here, these ridge poles actually go up rather than most tents where it's a single pole that kind of comes down and slopes downward. So what that does is it provides a lot of interior space. So this is another tent that the 2-person version of this tent actually is a good fit for 2 people. You don't, it doesn't feel nearly as cramped as many 2-person tents. The ridge pole is wide and the ridge pole is high, so that makes it easy to enter the tent. It's got these great big doors. It has fantastic ventilation, so you can see there's some unique vents on this tent that give a lot of ventilation. And again, just like you can kind of see the width and the pole structure here, it provides a really roomy interior space for just 2 people. So looking at the weight here, a little bit heavier than some of the other competing tents on this list, but for those roomy dimensions, it's probably well worth it for a lot of people, and especially if you're considering bumping up to a 3-person tent anyways, this is a 2-person version that has a pretty roomy interior for you. So the width of this tent is 53 inches, so that is a nice wide width, and it again has a nice high peak height. The length of this tent is 84 inches, 84 and a half, but I will say it doesn't feel, I know those are the listed dimensions, but it doesn't feel super short on the inside to me. So all things considered, the Sea to Summit Telos is a really unique offering tent. It does have some really cool features. Its stuff sacks are actually kind of unique. It comes with a light bar and some stuff sacks that can turn into like internal pockets. But looking at the big, most important things, its weight is very reasonable. Its interior space is very spacious compared to most 2-person tents. It's got great weather protection. Again, we wish the price was a little bit less, but it still is pretty reasonable for what you get, and is a fantastic tent offering. All right, the NEMO Dagger Osmo 2. This is another NEMO product we really like. It's got that same Osmo fabric. It's got a price in the $530 range, so that puts it right in line with a tent like the Copper Spur, but this is a very different design. This again is a little bit more of that kind of crossover tent design that we view it as good for both car camping and backpacking. Your weight's going to be up in the 4-pound range, 4 pound 2 ounces, so manageable. But this is another one of those tents that we would say, if you're really looking for a dedicated backpacking tent, you're going to be doing longer miles, you're looking for something that you're going to be mostly carrying on your back into the backcountry, into the mountains, I'd probably lean you towards something a little bit lighter than this tent. That said, this is still a fantastic tent. It can go backpacking. You can take it on long miles. it's just going to weigh a little bit more. It has a very roomy interior, and it's going to be comfortable for car camping. It has nice features. It has a very big vestibule, so you can see there's two points for tent stakes for the vestibule, so it has a really large vestibule. I actually, for backpacking purposes, I kind of like it when vestibules only have one, one tent stake spot for just kind of ease and convenience. But again, for a crossover tent, backpacking and car camping, this has a huge vestibule. It's got a ton of interior space. It has a fully rectangular floor. So that gives you a lot of room to spread out, or if you're using rectangular sleeping pads, that's also really nice. It does come with some convenient features, like I really like this this vestibule, bucket where you can put dirty shoes or your backpack or other gear, and it's not, if it's really wet out, the ground is wet and muddy, it's going to keep your gear dry. It's going to keep your gear from getting dirty. So there are some really nice features on this, and just in general, like I said, the materials on this tent are nice. The fabric on this tent really really nice. The zippers work well. I really like these Jake's Feet enclosures. It makes it very fast and easy and convenient to set up. Pretty good pockets on this tent. So again, lots of really nice features on this tent. Kind of depends on if you're looking for that the kind of car camping, convenient interior space, or you're more looking for a dedicated backpacking tent. But as far as if money's not an option, this is a really fantastic choice for backpacking and car camping. I'd say the direct competitor to this is something more like the REI Half Dome SL2 that we covered earlier. The nice thing about that tent is, it's going to save you a lot of money as far as the price of that tent. And if you take off the footprint, it's going to get decently close to the weight of this tent. Although this tent, I will say, the features and the space on inside and the fabric and all these things, is an upgrade from the quality of that. The MSR FreeLite 2, so this is the third and final semi-freestanding tent on our list. So you can see it, it's got that same pole structure where there's two poles that come at a Y, and then a singular pole that connects in the back, and then the feet have to be staked out. This does have a fairly short ridge pole, so the ridge pole is maybe about a foot long, so the sides of this tent do slope in. It does have a fully rectangular floor at 50 inches, so that is a nice, that's a nice part of this tent. It's got a ridiculously low weight, 2 pounds 5 ounces, and a nice price point at $450. I view this tent, the two-person version of this tent, again, because the walls slant in a little bit, I view it as a really, like a more comfortable one-person version of this tent. If you're going to be mostly, doing long miles and you're okay with a bit of a tight interior space, you can fit two people in here, especially with a fully rectangular floor. But, I've mostly used this as a single person camping tent, backpacking tent, which keeps the weight to an absolute minimum and is really a palace on the inside for one person, a ton of space for all your gear, fully rectangular floor, and a very very low weight. So this is a nice option. But if you are putting two people in there, it's going to get a little bit tight. If you're looking to bump up to a three-person version, I would probably recommend the NEMO Hornet three-person version and the Tiger Wall three-person version over the FreeLite. The other nice thing that the FreeLite has is rainfly gutters on the fly. So it's a little bit hard to see here, but there's a ridge that runs down the length of this rainfly that kind of helps to catch any water that's coming off of here. And it takes the water and it pools it down away from the door. So you get less, when it's really wet out, you get less water dripping directly down into your tent. It's not perfect, it's not foolproof, but it is very helpful. So I like the style of this tent. I like the aesthetics of it. I like the weather worthiness of it with the rainfly gutter. It's very light. It works well as a one-person tent. So there are definitely good things you know, to offer from this tent. Okay, next on our list is the REI Trailmade 2. So this, we have listed as a budget buy here. Again, one of the most affordable crossover tents for backpacking and car camping. This is a very traditional tent design. So you can see price here, we've got listed at $200. This is going to be the most affordable tent on our list. You will see that obviously there's a weight increase here. So again, 5 pounds, 7 ounces. This tent does come with a footprint, so that will help with the durability. And in general, it's got, durable zippers, durable materials, nice big wide doors. Generous dimensions as far as the length, the length and the width of the floor, and the peak height is, pretty average, right around 40 inches. So there's a lot of good things going on with this tent. Again, that 5 pounds, 7 ounces is going to be on the heavier side for backpacking. You can leave the footprint at home when you're backpacking and use it for car camping. So it's a good crossover tent in that regard. But if you're going to be doing longer miles or you're looking for a dedicated backpacking tent, this is on the heavier side. And again, that is a downside depending on how much backpacking you're doing. The other thing that is worth noting with this tent, it has a very classic design. It's about as simple as you can get for setting up a backpacking tent. It only has 2 poles. Doesn't matter which one you use. You don't need color coding because it's a fully symmetrical tent. There is no ridge pole you can see here. So, we have a full review of this tent on our site where you can see, oh, look at that. They're showing our picture, Clever Hiker picture here. So we have a picture from our review, same picture as that, on the side view that'll sort of show you, because there is no ridge pole with this tent. The sides do sort of slant in. Now it's a fully rectangular floor, so you can sit one person on one side and one person on the other side. So there is still quite a bit of interior space, but if both of you have your heads at the same side of the tent and you're both sitting up, the walls are going to kind of impede on your space a bit more. So it works a little bit better when kind of one person's at one side of the tent and the other person is at the other side. That said, there is still a lot to like with this tent, especially given its affordability and depending on, maybe you're new to backpacking, or, price is very important for you, or you're less concerned with weight depending on your uses for the tent. It is a very affordable value buy tent that is actually still going to keep you dry and is, still going to last for a long time if you take care of it, where you can find cheaper tents on the market, but they're going to fall apart. They're not going to be weather worthy. The first time it rains, you're going to realize, oh, this tent is not seam sealed, or oh, these fiberglass poles are going to crack in half the first time I try and set it up. So it's a durable tent. It's a classic design. This is a classic design for backpacking tents, for tents in general. That cross design's been around for many years and it's worked well for a lot of people. So definitely a good budget option there. 6 Moon Design Lunar Duo. So this is another single wall tent. We don't have a lot of single wall tents on this list, and we do have a list of ultralight tents. If you're just looking at single wall ultralight tents, or that's what you're in the market for, you can check that out. But this tent represents a really good value for single wall tents. It's got a nice weight, 2 pounds 13 ounces for a very spacious 2-person tent. So length 90 inches, width 54 inches, pretty wide, peak height 45 inches, again pretty wide. And at the top here of this structure, so again, this is a trekking pole tent, so you're going to use your trekking poles to set this up, and it does have these bent bars at the top that kind of help round out the ceiling and give you that little extra bit of headroom in this tent. So for the price, this is a really great value buy for a single wall tent. Same downsides with this single wall tent that I mentioned with the Zpacks Duplex. It is a sil nylon tent, so it doesn't have the price associated with the DCF fabric, but but you are going to have, it's when it gets wet, it's going to sag a bit more. You might experience a little bit more interior condensation, but again, it's really a palace on the inside for two people, so it's a great option if you're committed to a single wall tent. You're okay with it being harder to set up in certain circumstances or taking a little bit longer, and you want, that sweet spot between kind of keeping weight down, but also having a really big, roomy interior tent. This is a great option for that. So the final tent on our list here is the MSR Hubba Hubba 2. This tent, again, has been on the list for a long time, was a longtime favorite. It has kind of fallen down the list over the years. I think its strengths still, make it worthwhile for being on this list, but it does have a couple of downsides that, push it down lower on our list. We do think its price is fair. We do think, the weight, MSR has actually addressed the weight with the latest version of this tent, so it is a much more reasonable, competitive weight. It is a very weather-worthy tent. It has that rainfly gutter design, and also the shape of this tent, the pole structure with, it's got a large ridge pole, and the way that the poles are structured make it so that when wind pushes up against this tent, it sheds wind really well. So this is a good tent for weather worthiness. It's a tough tent, durable tent, does really well in the weather. One thing that I'm not a huge fan of with this tent, and probably one of the reasons why it got knocked down a little bit, we'll see if we can find a picture to show here. It's a little hard to see, but the way that this pole structure kind of, it goes, straight up here, which provides a nice vertical space on both sides of the tent, and then it connects to the top, and you got your ridge pole here. But this piece of fabric right here kind of leans into the tent, so you kind of have four sides, where on this side and the opposing sides, you do have the tent walls kind of pulling in a little bit, and that does limit your interior space on the inside. Again, it's sort of similar to what we were talking about with the REI Trailmade, where it's a fully rectangular floor. So if you have two people, sitting on opposite sides, it feels very spacious. But it's not quite as spacious when you have two people sitting up right next to each other at the head of the tent. So again, great weather protection, fully freestanding, easy to set up, durable. It's lightweight, it's got good pockets, but it does have a little less roomy on the interior side, and that $550 price point isn't super cheap. Okay, so that wraps up our tent list talk for today. Let me just run through the tents real quick for you. For the TLDR out there, let me give you the quick rundown, and then we can wrap up. So again, Big Agnes Copper Spur, excellent choice, 2-person, 3-person version. There are long sizes available for this, great balance of weight and quality and interior space and weather protection. So really fantastic choice here. Zpacks Duplex or Triplex are our favorites among this one. Incredibly, incredible ultralight tent. Love this tent. Great tent for long distance backpacking. It's on the expensive side, but it's a great investment. If you are looking for this unique design, single wall ultralight tents, we do have a backpacking ultralight tents page that you can check out for our recommendations there. This is our top pick in that space. REI Half Dome SL2. This is a fantastic tent if you're looking for a crossover tent. It's on the more affordable size. The 2-person version is actually wide enough and spacious enough for 2 people, so you don't have to bump up to that 3-person size, but it is on the heavier side when it comes to backpacking. So the longer miles that you do, the tougher miles that you do, the more we would sort of recommend a lighter choice. Big Agnes Tiger Wall. This is a semi-freestanding tent. It strikes a great balance between price and weight and convenience. It does have that semi-freestanding nature to it, so you have to stake out the feet. not a huge deal, slight inconvenience maybe, but it still is a fantastic tent. It's a tighter interior, so you may consider the 3-person size, but the 2-person size is still a great option both for solo hikers and for smaller pairs. SlingFin Portal, excellent choice. This is a tent that is, in competition with the Big Agnes Copper Spur. It has unique features like a long ridge pole to give it very vertical walls. You can attach your trekking poles to the ridge pole and provide a lot of stability in wind. Has interior guy lines, which is unique and again very durable for weather resistance. A competitive weight and a really nice roomy size. The length does feel a little bit short for me. I'm on the longer size, the taller side. But again, a really fantastic backpacking tent. NEMO Hornet Osmo 3. The 2-person version of this is also fantastic for solo backpackers if you're a little bit on the shorter side. The 3-person version is really spacious for 2 people and has a great weight and price point for a really huge interior space. So I like this tent a lot for 2 people. Summit Telos TR2. This is a great tent. It's a little on the expensive side. It's a little heavier than some of the options, but it's another tent that actually can sleep 2 people in it and still feel comfortable. So the 2-person version does fit 2 people pretty well. So this is another great tent, really nice weatherworthiness, unique features, high ceilings, easy to get in and out. A lot of good things to like with this tent. The NEMO Dagger Osmo 2 is a little bit more of a car camping and backpacking crossover. It's got a weight that's a little bit heavier and a price point that's a little bit more than something like the REI Half Dome SL2, but it's a really high quality tent, high quality materials. We really like a lot of the different features on this tent, very spacious interior and a fully rectangular floor. So that's a nice option, especially if you're going to be doing a little bit more car camping than backpacking or shorter backpacking trips. If you are going to be backpacking a little bit more, we'd probably recommend something a little bit lighter. MSR FreeLite 2. This is a great tent. I actually like it more for solo use. It's the 2-person version, but it has a pretty narrow ridge pole, so the walls slant in, makes it a little bit less useful for 2 people. You can still fit 2 people in there. It's got a big wide floor at 50 inches, so it is a palace for 1 person. 2 people lying down feels great. When 2 people are sitting up, those walls kind of come in a little bit, but it has a ridiculously lightweight, very convenient to set up, a nice competitive price point. So again, a nice option to look at. REI Trailmade 2. So this is a very affordable backpacking tent. It's affordable, but it's still going to keep you dry. Whereas a lot of affordable tents on the market are not going to last very long. The poles are going to break. They're not seam sealed. So if you're actually in some inclement weather, you're going to get wet. That's not going to be the case with this tent. It's a classic design. It'll last for a long time. It's a very value driven price. The weight is heavier. You can leave that footprint at home and save about 8 ounces. So it still is manageable for backpacking, but it's on the heavier side. If you're really looking for a dedicated backpacking tent, I'd probably go with something lighter. But this is a great entry-level tent, works for car camping, works for backpacking. It does not have a ridge pole, so the sides do pull in a little bit, so it doesn't have the most interior space. But again, this is a classic type of tent design. It's been around for decades, and it will get the job done, and it'll last a very long time. 6 Moon Design Lunar Duo. So this is a nice single wall tent similar to the Zpacks Duplex, but this is an even bigger interior. It does weigh a bit more. The price is quite a bit less because it's made out of sil nylon, so it's going to sag a little bit more when wet, and you might need to retension it. But it has a very generous dimensions, 54 inches wide and 90 inches long. It's got these bent poles at the top to give you even more interior space. So you are going to deal with interior condensation. You're going to have to set up a non-freestanding tent, so there's a little bit more fooling around and creativity there. This isn't going to be for everybody, but it is a sweet spot for someone looking for a lightweight tent with a lot of living room. And then finally, the MSR Hubba Hubba 2. This tent, provides great weather protection. It's got the rainfly, door gutters. It's got a good shape for shedding wind. It is in a very competitive weight class, and the price, is also kind of right there among kind of the top tier tents. Fully rectangular floor, so it does have a good amount of interior space, but the way that the space in the tent is spread up and the materials, they kind of close in a little bit, so it's more roomy when you got one person sitting on one side and one on the other. When you're sitting side by side, those walls kind of close in a little bit. So anyways, hopefully that is helpful. Really appreciate you following along here today. Thanks again. Please leave a comment if you have anything to share, and happy hiking. Take care.